Welcome to Ottoman Turks Radio TV, and we're lifelong Catholics. And what we do is all for free, and for the love of Jesus Christ, and for our Holy Mother, the Church. And we'll defend our Holy Mother, the Church. Yesterday was the anniversary of the fall of Constantinople. So we're going to give you some history lessons on where was Constantinople, and what was Constantinople, and also about how it fell. Welcome, Brother Alexis, to the program.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on Ordo Militaris Radio TV. Yes, it's the 507th anniversary. In the West, we don't usually commemorate May 29th anyway, but it's a national holiday in Turkey because the Turks still remember this day. And as one very intelligent Armenian commented this morning, they celebrate it to let everyone know that they're really not from Turkey. They're invaders that conquered things. So the fall of Constantinople was an event that was considered by all Christendom one of the great tragedies of the 15th century. No one dreamed it would ever fall. It had been a Christian institution since the founding by Constantine, who was the first Christian emperor. And Constantinople, AJ, for people who don't know what the name of that city is today in Turkish, what's the name of the city?
Istanbul.
Yes, and it's not the capital of Turkey. The capital of Turkey is Ankara, but it is at the point where Europe touches Asia Minor. It's on a little peninsula there on the Bosphorus. Very strategic point for transportation, economy, politics. It was founded by Constantine. Who was Constantine?
He was the first Roman emperor that legalized Christianity in the entire Roman world.
That's right, and he did that after defeating Maxentius at a bridge in Rome, just a few miles from where I am here, and where he saw a cross appear in the sky at dawn, and he heard a voice said, "In this sign you shall conquer." So Constantine had to maintain control of the empire, and the easiest way to do that would be a city that's in Europe, yet right on the edge of Asia, because the Roman Empire spanned two continents. And so he moved the capital from Rome to Byzantium. He also, I think, liked you say Oriental things more than Western things. Constantine was not a Roman; he was an Illyrian. You would call him maybe Croatian today, or a Sloven, who's not quite sure what that ethnicity would be. And he built this city named after him. Constantinople means the city of Constantine, and it became the greatest city of Christendom, the wealthiest, the most beautiful. It was like the New York City of its age, to use a really bad comparison, but because New York is godless, but this was Catholic. And you probably heard of the Hagia Sophia, the great church in the great church dedicated to the Holy Spirit in Constantinople, which was turned into a mosque, and we'll talk about that in today's show. So, what empire fell when Constantinople fell on May 29th, 1453, AJ? We need to set the record straight.
So when Constantinople fell, then the Roman Empire fell.
So, because what did the Greeks call here in the West? We often call it the Byzantine Empire or the Greek Empire. But what did the Greeks at Constantinople call their empire?
The Roman Empire.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, one of the first codes of Roman law, the Justinian Code, which was published in the 6th century, 6th, 7th century, by the Emperor Justinian, who was an emperor at Constantinople. It was written in Latin. but it was published at Constantinople. This is how important Constantinople is even in the history of law. And Constantinople was fortified with huge walls. Behind me is an image of Caracas Cavaliers. This would have been like a drop in comparison to the fortifications of Constantinople. Go online and see them. And so no one thought this city would ever fall. Hey, you know, we talk about the Crusaders a lot. Didn't the Crusaders visit Constantinople?
Yeah, the first ones went and got help there. Then I believe was it the fourth Crusaders?
Yeah, the Fourth Crusades were bad. Okay, so the first ones, yeah, they allied with Alexius, and they all swore allegiance to him. And the First Crusade arrived at Constantinople in 1098. This is just 50 years, 40 years, 44 years after the schism between the Patriarch of Constantinople and the Patriarch of Rome. It's called the Great Schism, which separates the Latins and the Orthodox to this day. But the Catholic Crusaders all swore allegiance to the Orthodox emperor. They understood that this was a disagreement among the clergy, all except Bohemond. He was a rival. He being from southern Italy, he wasn't going to become an ally of the Greek emperor, and he went on to found the Principality of Antioch, and it was, I think, one of his. It's his daughter who married into the house of Jerusalem, and the kings of Jerusalem are descended from him. If I remember right, because he took an Armenian bride, I think. So it's interesting. So the Crusaders actually, First Crusade helped the empire, Greek Empire, push back the Turks and take the Mideast and created a whole period of prosperity. But the Fourth Crusaders, out of greed, pushed by the Venetians, supported a Byzantine rival for the throne, took the city. It is said they sacked the city. Well, they took a lot of treasures from it. And if you go to St. Mark's Piazza in Venice, you will see the treasures are still there. If you go in St. Mark's, there's a big, high, beautiful piece of artwork behind the high altar, all made of jewels. Just jewels. That's not a mosaic made out of stone. It's made out of jewels, and that was taken from Constantinople, as well as the horses and the pillars outside of St. Mark's and St. Louis. So the Greeks really didn't like that. That's becoming a principal talking point for any Greek nationalists or Orthodox against the Latins. Oh, we didn't sack Constantinople. A bunch of errant crusaders who broke their vows and who were immediately excommunicated by the Pope. They sacked Constantinople, and the Vatican immediately, upon hearing it, denounced it. Long time ago, I shouldn't say the Vatican, the papacy, the Vatican exists back. So we'll talk about the causes of that. So let's first talk about how Constantinople fell. There's a great account on Twitter that usually summarizes history called the Bulgarian Chronicler, and that will give you a short history. You can go on Wikipedia and read the real long, detailed history. Yeah. What does the Bulgarian Chronicler say about this fateful day, May 29th, 1453? Yes.
Get where it starts here.
Yeah, it's quite long, but it's very informative.
Today, 570 years ago, the Ottoman Janissaries poured over the Theodosian walls. The Janissaries fled when their leader, Giovanni Giustini, was injured. The emperor threw himself into hopeless struggle and died with his men. After 2,000 years, the Roman Empire was no more. The final siege of Constantinople is the last chapter in the swain song of the last, he calls Byzantine Empire, but the Roman Empire, in a dramatic tale of betrayal and duty, determination, honor, and horror. In 449, Emperor John VIII died, and his brother Constantine IX took the throne, crowned in a small ceremony in Mistras. Constantine was never coronated by the Patriarch in Constantinople, thanks to his support for the union with the papacy. The unpopular movement in Byzantium Constantine thought the papal union was necessary to secure military aid from the West. The empire was in dire straits, with only the Peloponnese and some land just outside the city. The threat of the growing Ottoman Empire loomed large over the Byzantine. Constantinople, like the empire, was much reduced. Only 50 to 70,000 people inhabited once sprawling metropolis. Orchards, fields, ruins covered much of the city. The Theodosian walls were much reduced from neglect. The 21-year-old Mehmet II, tired of Byzantine meddling in Ottoman power politics and hell-bent on taking the Queen of Cities, threw himself into preparations for a brutal siege. Mehmet, in order to stop Western aid, built a great fortress on the Bosphorus called the Strait Cutter. When the Venetian ships tried to pass without paying custom dues, the Ottomans sunk it with one cannon shot and killed the survivors. Constantine recognized that he had no time to lose, forced the court to ratify the union with the papacy in an effort to secure life-saving aid. The West, however, was unenthusiastic. Funded by the Pope, Cardinal Isidore arrived with only 200 archers, funded some repairs on the city walls, notably a contingent of fearsome Catalans and the Ottoman prince and hostage Orhan Celebi, with 600 Ottoman defectors joined the defense. Constantine's hopes for substantial aid lay with Venice, which wasted precious time debating the issue. However, they let Constantine hire Cretan soldiers famed in the Latin Empire for their skill and loyalty. The Italian residents and sailors of the city decided to stay and fight. From Genoa came the famous mercenary Giovanni Giustini, or Justin Justinian, an expert in defending cities. He brought 400 elite troops from Italy, 300 from Chios, and Johann Grant, a German countermining expert. Constantine promised Giovanni Lesbos in return for his services. A Hungarian cannon maker, Orban, offered his service to Constantine, but was too expensive for the empire. Orban turned to Mehmet and built him a massive cannon that would blast the walls of Babylon itself. 60 oxen and 400 men were needed to pull it.
Treacherous Hungarian.
Yeah. Same as his ancestor now. Mehmet set out from Adrianople and his men building a road to Constantinople for his lumbering cannons. His best troops went to Byzantine redoubts and took them. For weeks Mehmet bombarded the walls with his cannons. Every night the defenders would repair damage, negating them. Mehmet's assaults in the walls were repulsed with heavy losses. The skilled defense of the imposing Theodosian walls by the Byzantine Genoese, Cretan, even Turkish soldiers stymied Mehmet's plans even as the walls buckled under the bombardment. Hoping to stretch the defenders, the Ottoman fleet tried to enter the Golden Horn. However, an iron chain lay across the entrance. The Ottomans couldn't destroy the chain, and Mehmet whipped his admiral after 4 ships laden with supplies and troops ran the blockade into the harbor.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to describe geography. So if you're looking at Constantinople from directly overhead, you're going to see a triangle pointing out into the Bosphorus, and then a narrow gulf of water on the north side, and a piece of land there. So that narrow trough of water on the north side is called the Golden Horn, and prevents the northern walls of the city being attacked from the opposite land because the water was so far aside. And so to prevent the Ottoman ships from entering, the Constantine had placed a chain across the water, and that's what that's talking about there.
Mehmet would not be deterred. His army constructed a road of greased logs around the Genoese colony, Aglata, and pulled their ships across it and into the Golden Horn. This demoralized the Byzantines, now having to defend the weak sea walls and cut off from aid from Galata and beyond. On the night of April 28th, the Byzantines set fire ships toward the Ottoman fleet in the Golden Horn, but were repulsed with heavy losses. The Ottomans continued to assault the walls to no avail. In mid-May, Mehmet ordered tunnels to be dug under the Theodosian walls. The Ottoman sappers were outmatched by Johannes Grant. He placed bottles of water along the walls to find the tunnels, countermining and collapsing them. On May 23rd, 2 Turkish officers were captured and tortured. They revealed the locations of the last tunnels. Grant destroyed them. Both armies grew desperate as the siege wore on. Casualties mounted. Constantine dispatched ships to look for the Venetian fleet, but they returned no fleet was coming. Some of Mehmet's advisors, seeing the losses the young king had suffered, suggested he lift the siege. Mehmet offered Constantine governorship of the Peloponnese and the safety of all the city for his surrender. Constantine replied, "It is not for me to decide for anyone else of its citizens, for all of us have reached a mutual decision to die of our own free will."
Well, the Turks would have beheaded them anyhow. They got their hands on them.
Hmm. On May 28th, the Ottomans prepared for the final assault. The defenders of the city, Latin and Orthodox, worshipped together at the Hagia Sophia for Vespers the night before Pentecost. After midnight, the assault began. Waves of irregular troops attacked the walls near Blackshirne. None broke through until the Janissaries, the Ottoman elite, pushed over the walls, which Justinian wounded. The Janissaries in retreat, the Ottoman flag flying over the Kirkoporta, a small postern gate that was left unlocked. Oh boy.
Yeah, now it was the Greek patriarch who unlocked that door and let the Turks in because he didn't want the city to become Catholic again. So this is the one great tragedy. So when any Greek Orthodox tells you the fall of Constantinople was the fault of the Catholics, remember this little thing. Because the Greek Orthodox Patriarch's palace was like right across the street. So you couldn't forget that gate unlocked. It just couldn't happen.
Many fled to the ships, sought sanctuary in churches, or returned to their homes to protect their families. Constantine cried, "The city is fallen, I am still alive." He tore off his imperial regalia and led his men in one final charge. His body was never found.
Because they didn't know the Ottomans didn't know what he looked like, so they couldn't. And he took off his things so they wouldn't mutilate his body. And but yeah, what a great man he was to fight for his empire to the very end and to unite Catholics and Orthodox on Pentecost Sunday. So.
So for 3 days the Ottomans sacked the city, enslaving all they could find, massacring all who resisted or were too young or old to be of use. But treasures that survived to 1,204 were taken or destroyed by the attackers. Many hapless citizens barricaded themselves in Hagia Sophia. Divine intervention they prayed for did not come to pass. The Ottomans broke in. Those of use were enslaved. The women were raped. Notably, the Grand Duke Lucas Notorious' daughter was forced to lie on the altar with a crucifix under her head and gang raped by several Ottomans.
So, when they say you should be tolerant of Islam, ask when has Islam been tolerant of Christianity? And that's the barbarity. And Hagia Sophia was the largest Catholic church ever built. And for only 120 or so years, I think, it was celebrated the Orthodox liturgy, it was celebrated the Catholic liturgy, and the other times, or at least a liturgy in communion with the Apostolic See. So this is the tragedy, and it was such shock to Europe that even musicians wrote lamentations about it. And maybe AJ can put that in the show page in Lamentation, but that order showed the other day.
Yeah.
And this was a tremendous blow, because this meant now that there could be no commerce to any country on the Black Sea without the consent of the Ottoman Turks. And within just 120 years, we're going to see the Ottomans mass one of the largest fleets in Islamic history and attempt to take Italy at the Battle of Lepanto. And we've done, I think we did a show on Lepanto already. So this was a great tragedy, a great shock. And to this day, it is a terrible sorrow for the Greeks, not only Greek nationalists, but the Greek Orthodox. And I think most of the Orthodox in general, even the czars of Russia in the last century had a goal of taking back Constantinople. And the Greeks in their war with the Turks from 1917 to 1922, they actually did take back Constantinople and held it for a few years or a few months. I don't know exactly the details. So how is it that this great empire fell to the Ottomans? What are some of the causes, AJ, and so people can understand what leads to the collapse of an empire? Our order listed them in a series of tweets the other day on our main account.
Yeah. Get to those. So, the greed of the Greek nobility, who from the... Let me get this thing zoomed in here. From the 11th century onwards, drove the common man off the land, preventing large families, which were the source of the manpower of the imperial army. Then we have the apostasy that went on with the imperial government, where they didn't want to even unify with the Pope to save the city. It was like in the longer version on Wikipedia, it was only half of the court, even haphazardly supported unifying to get help. So they were already falling away from the gospel of Christ, and yeah, so then the inability of the Roman Empire at Constantinople developed a constitutional method for handing over power. So when one of the ruling family's emperors dies, they don't just hand on to a new guy like they do in Poland, or they have wars between each other. The one who comes out on top becomes the emperor.
Mm-hmm. It's not good for maintaining national unity, or I should say imperial unity. But that was the inheritance of the Roman Empire, because the pagan Roman Empire didn't have a method for handing on power.
So when Arabs invaded the Middle East and creation of the myth of Muhammad with and the death-centered cult, it really perversed the politics and even masculinity at the time. So, and not many wanted to stand up to. Oh, come on.
Yeah, so, and this has been true throughout history. In past ages, when Islamic armies came to town, if you didn't negotiate with them, they would slaughter all the men, rape all the boys and girls and all the women, and sell them into slavery. And a lot of people just didn't want to face that kind of level of terror. It was terrorism.
Yeah.
The Islamic religion is innately terroristic, at least in its medieval form.
So when they entered into the area of Asia Minor and the Balkan areas,
The Turks,
yeah, the Turks, they brought that brutality, and only a handful would stand up to them and defeat them. And it was only, what was it? My grandpa Charles Martel stood up and defeated them in Tours. Then another relative, I think, was it later on? John Sobieski.
He was a century and a half after this, I think, the Battle of Vienna.
So only a handful of Christian leaders could face them and defeat them. So
El Cid.
yeah, Elsa.
Mm-hmm.
So when empires fall because of infidelity, mostly infidelity to Christ, and to become too greedy, too power happy, and when they attack their own citizens, the common man who fills the ranks of the armies, when you abandon all that, you're left with nothing to defend yourself.
That kind of makes me think of what's going on today in the West, especially in the United States.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a series on Auto Militaris Radio TV about U.S. veterans, how they're exploited, suicide rates, PSTD, and how they're used for medical experimentation, which is going to open up um, open up the reality of what's going on in the U.S. military that I don't think any Catholic organization talks about. And if your son or daughter is thinking of joining the U.S. military, you need to listen to that series we'll be doing later this week.
Yep. With things getting worse for Armenia and Artsakh and their prime minister showing showing his colors, siding with the Turks. All I can say, this is a Trojan horse.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to see something maybe similar in the Republic of Artsakh shortly, since everyone seems to have abandoned them, the Christians there. Not only the government of Armenia, the government of Russia, the Christian government of Georgia, and the Christian governments of the West, who seem to be all under control of the Rothschilds, who want that oil in Azerbaijan to flow and are willing to kill 160,000 people to make it happen. And this is the story of the downfall of empire. So you cannot stand unless you stand with Christ. And if you think that you can survive without Christ, you're gonna go down hard. And if you think that you're such a perfect Christian and you have such perfect Christian ancestors that you can betray Christ, fornicate, commit adultery, and play games with religion and set up your own church, you're going to go down hard. And these are the sins now in Western Christianity at all levels, among laity, clergy, religious, and the hierarchy. and among all our governments and political parties. So if you think there's good times headed ahead, you sit around and watch this evil go on, you're going to be in for a big surprise, because it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. Unless Christians unite for the defense of Christians, because they love Jesus Christ and believe they have a right to defend themselves and have the courage to defend themselves on a bunch of namby-pamby LARPers, which seems about the only thing left today's generation. They'll play a video game, think that they're rough, and then, you know, they get extremely upset if you put too much cream in their latte. Coffee in their latte.
And one of the heroes who was fighting with Constantine to defend the city was Cardinal Isidore of Kiev.
Oh, yeah. So this is a really interesting story. Who would think that there was a Ukrainian at the Battle of Constantinople? So tell us something about Isidore of Kiev, AJ?
So, yeah. So, from his Catholic hierarchy page, he was born in 1385. In 1437, when he turned 52, he was appointed Archbishop of Kiev. It means he was the Metropolitan.
Mhm.
In December 18th, 1439, he was elevated to Cardinal. At the age of 55, he was made Cardinal Priest of Santi Marcellino e Petro. And at the age of 57, he resigned the role as Archbishop of Kiev. Then he was appointed Cardinal Archbishop of Sabina on February 7th, 1451, at the age of 66. There he was made administrator of Servia, Italy. 2 times. Okay, yeah. Then he resigned that. Then they appointed him administrator of Nicosia, Cyprus. And at the age of 73, the church appointed him titular patriarch of Constantinople.
And that was after the fall of Constantinople. So here's a old man in his 60s, 10 years older than myself, a cardinal who led 200 men into battle at Constantinople. So if you think your favorite cardinal is really militant, I suggest you read the biography of Isidore of Kiev. This guy is a real, I can't say the language because I'm a Franciscan, but you HA kind of cardinal, and great Ukrainian. He was born an Orthodox, and he returned communion to the Catholic Church. So he was a convert, a monk. You can't become Metropolitan of Kiev as a monk. He was probably a monk of that monastery there, the Lavra Monastery, which was recently in the news, which was founded by Catholic hermits. So this guy was a little everything: military leader, diplomat, cardinal. He ended up Carmelengo of the College of Cardinals, and he was and Patriarch of Constantinople. So a great man of history. It would be wonderful if someone ever does a film about his life. That would be absolutely fabulous. And encouragement to vocations, because if you have a vocation to be a monk or priest, doesn't mean you have a vocation to be a wimp. And that is a wrong-headed idea that a lot of people have. And when you see someone who's a wimp that wants to be a priest or a monk, please discourage him. I always discourage him. That's not what it's for. It's not for people who want to hide from battle. It's for people who want to go to battle. And if we had more cardinals like that, we'd have a lot better popes being elected. That's for sure. So AJ, thank you for doing this program about the fall of Constantinople, the 570th anniversary of this very sad day. In 5 years now, we have to remember to do this show again for the 575th anniversary. And it's a moment to remember what happened in the past because of the cumulative sins of men, even though the men at the very end were very heroic and gave their lives for Christ and the Christian people of the city. And so now you know the history of Constantinople and what Istanbul, the name was changed to hide the fact, to hide the reality. And if you ever get to Istanbul, you can still see the Hagia Sophia. It's turned into a mosque now. And you can still see a lot of the Theodosian walls. And some of the buildings of the Christian era remain.
Mm-hmm. This is Order Militaris Radio TV signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.